April is National Stress Awareness Month. On behalf of my partner and ex Judicata CEO, Neil Handwerker, it is our pleasure to welcome you to episode 3 of the 5 Pillars of Executive Wellness. As a reminder, this event is being recorded. While Ashlee is sharing, please do keep your mics muted. We have plenty of time for discussion. Please raise your hand or place your questions in the chat. Now, please join me in welcoming Ashlee, our interactive discussion leader. Ashlee is a seasoned legal operations and technology leader who has spent more than a decade helping high growth tech companies such as Asana and Dropbox build scalable, business minded legal departments through strategic technology implementations, process optimization, and thoughtful leadership. Her background is in engineering with PMP certificates from UC Berkeley and Stanford. Ashlee is passionate about integrating mindfulness based practices into high stress business and legal environments to support sustainable performance and well being. She's a certified wellness coach and a graduate of Warrior One's Mindfulness in Law Teacher Training Program. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you to Ashlee. Ashlee, I'll now go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kimberly and Neil, for creating this space for all of us. This is episode 3, and we are going through really 5 paradigms that drive executive positive change. We started off the series with beliefs. That should be in the community materials on the website. Last week we covered the mind, and then today we're going to cover the body. Next week is connections, and we'll close the series with environment. So the agenda for today, if you've been watching along, it's pretty much the same format. We're going to arrive. We're going to regulate our nervous system. We're also going to just check in right now. And, without any context, I'm going to ask you, when did you really last check in with your body? I know that sounds odd, but, take a moment and just ask that question. How are you doing in there? And direct it towards your body. If you would like, I do want to invite everybody to be cameras off. This is not, we just want this time for you that you can just relax and take in the content. So if you haven't already, feel free to turn your cameras off and check in with that body again. And I don't mean, did I hit my step count, but like a genuine, hey, how are you doing? That is what this whole session is about. It's not how your body is shaped or what it looks like, and it's not what it can or can't do, but it's really the awareness around understanding that your body holds deep intelligence. And again, this is National Stress Awareness Month, and I'm here to say that our day-to-day operating out there in the world does actually take a toll on your body. And your body sends signals if we can start to build the awareness to listen. And we're going to start doing that today. So we're going to have a somatic body scan, a really short presentation, and then my favorite part is when we'll stop the recording and we'll be writing with some discussion. So the somatic body scan, what the heck is that? It's actually a practice that moves the attention systematically through the body, building the internal listening skill that really this whole concept depends on. A body scan can also be used if you're trying to build a meditation practice and you think, oh, I just have thought after thought after thought. You can actually direct those thoughts toward your body. Now, some people can experience strong emotions, and that's really because we're shining a light on what busyness sometimes can keep buried for us. So we just have to learn to listen before our bodies break down and scream, hey, I need attention. So first, sit comfortably I'm going to model the same and just have your feet flat and your spine just gently upright. And then if you feel comfortable, I invite you to close your eyes, or you can find a spot in the room to just soften your gaze if you don't want to close your eyes. Now take 3 slow breaths. And while you're doing that, with each exhale, bring your awareness and attention into your body and see if you can just feel a little heavier and heavier in the chair. Now we're going to move through the body together. And as I name an area, your job is to just notice, is there tension there? Is there ease? Is there numbness? Is there heat, cold? No judgment, just attention. So starting with your feet, bring your mind awareness to your feet. What are you noticing? Now, if your mind wanders, we're just going to keep coming back to the body. You're going to move to your calves and shins. You're going to see if there's any sensations going on there. And now move on up to your knees and your thighs. If you're sitting, you might feel the backs of your thighs in your chair. Now move on to your hips and your low back. This is where a lot of us carry unspoken stress. So things that maybe we haven't vocalized can be stored right here. We're going to spend a little more time just noticing what is going on here. Now bring your mind awareness to your stomach and your chest. Notice your breathing. Is it shallow? Does it perhaps feel like you're breathing from the top of your lungs? And without judgment, maybe your body is saying, breathe with your full lung. That inhale, and then exhale it all out. Another area that can be a tension trap, your shoulders. Really let them drop on your next natural breath, your next inhale. And then exhale, let them drop. Your neck and your jaw. So a lot of times when people do body scans, they'll just move they'll find that they're rocking, or kind of like my head started to just go side to side as soon as I brought attention to my neck. My neck said, yeah, there's tension here. Probably from the position I slept in on my flight last night. I'm noticing the wall of an airplane isn't that comfortable to put your head against. And your face. Bring attention to your face, your forehead. Does it feel relaxed? Does your eyebrows, maybe you can move your eyebrows up and down. Are you holding anything there? And then what about that space behind your eyes? I don't know what it's called, an eye socket. As we wind down our body scan, see if you can take a deep inhale and kind of exhale through that space behind your eyes. Now, return to the room, and in one word, if you feel comfortable in the chat, what did you notice? Was there a loud signal in your body being sent? So our bodies have been trying to get our attention. And this whole practice of awareness of your body is about giving our bodies the attention that it is actually speaking, but we haven't tuned our ear into it until a lot of people that have done this work, myself included, have basically a health crisis, collapsing from job stress, burnout. But now that I'm in the teacher seat, I realize that my body had been sending signals all along, but I just pushed through. So we're going to talk about that with our presentation. I'm going to share my screen one moment. All right. No surprise here. Law school and legal work is stressful. And there's a bulleted list of all the ways that stress can, quite frankly, impact the body. And that's why we're here. This author, I love this diagram, and I recommend picking up this book if you haven't already. This picture captures not only is just the work stressful, but the culture within the work, within the environment in which the work is being done, really measures worth in a sense of busyness. Billable hours, right, are a huge factor in accomplishments. But I love this picture because I'm not a scientist at all, but it really gives me a sense of, and hopefully you, the interplay of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic systems. That any real emotion or thought or unconscious belief can actually trigger the sympathetic system, and you can actually be in a state of stress on your body, and perhaps thinking, this is just how it is. This is just how I work. I want my heart rate racing when I'm in the courtroom because it gives me the edge, or I can't rest because I might miss something. But and I'll say that again, and we're going to have a slide, a couple slides down. Every thought and emotion has some sort of impact on one of these systems. They're either regulating and bringing you back down into that state of rest and recovery, or it's heightening. And this is what I mean when I say emotion. I don't know if anybody is familiar with the feeling wheel. I remember being asked by my teacher, "How are you feeling today?" And my answer was, "Ugh." So, what is that? I actually hadn't connected my mind and my body yet, and so my body answered for me in that exhale, kind of, yeah, like, how am I feeling? That's how I'm feeling. And then my teacher said, "Well, are you feeling?" And you always take it, the middle of the feeling wheel is, I would position this as, what are we born with? Like, just as little humans coming into the world, we have to have something that's guiding us, because we're born into survival mode, and we are always trying to figure out, is this good? Is this bad? And then as we get older, we start showing others, and the area around the wheel is maybe more what people see, or what you would say of yourself. If you're proud of your team's accomplishments, that's really mapping into that root element, or that root emotion of happy. Disney actually made a movie about this, or Pixar, or one of them, In and Out. And I know it's a cartoon, but it actually is a really interesting approach to understanding how your kind of primal emotions are probably the first responders when a thought, or something's happening outside of you. How are you reacting to that? And then the awareness that we give that thought or emotion is how we kind of gain control of our primal brain. And you all will have access to the slides and the feeling wheel. There's so many of them. This one I like because it introduced that concept of surprise and numbness, which I have never seen before. And I definitely have felt purposeless in my life, where I felt like I hadn't aligned my what I do every day to something that brings me joy. But it was showing up, and I definitely had a feeling of numbness. So it's all information, it's all data. Hopefully not for yourself to beat yourself up, but just as more of a curiosity and awareness. Now here's the fun part, and I put a little brain here because it's like, oh no, feelings can actually combine together. So that, yeah, I see. Thank you. Yeah, I see some of you nodding your head, and I, when I first saw this, because I had a friendship in the past 5 years, that a long friendship that has changed. We're not as close. We've had some tough conversations, and it really comes down to our values are just misaligned, and we never really saw that before. But I have a melancholy, like, looking back on the friendship, and like how I feel now, is I do feel joy that I met this person, and that we did all these amazing things. but there is a sadness like underneath that joy. And so that's why I like this slide is not only do we have the feeling wheel, but guess what? Our feelings don't happen one at a time. And sometimes, has anybody heard of that term? I'm flooded, overwhelmed. That's what people are trying to say is I'm feeling a lot of things at once. And so this is a great, you can share this with your team if, especially if you're in a leadership role and, you're having one-on-ones and you notice somebody on your team is just off and you want to create that space, right? Like, tell me how are you feeling today? And, you can use stuff like this to just make people feel seen and to help them learn too. So back to this whole series is about awareness. And now we're adding that third component. The thoughts are based in beliefs, a lot of times, conscious and unconscious, empowered and limited beliefs. Then our mind responds to that thought with some sort of emotion. And as we just saw on those two slides, they can pile on each other. And then that third side of the triangle is the body sensation. How is all of this showing up in my body? And this area that I'm still in this practice, and I probably will be my whole life, of understanding that your body has its own intelligence and you can't be so analytical about your body because your body has an older intelligence that requires more conscious intention. And your body is really not a problem to be solved. I had my note here. Oh yeah, I just reminded myself. I just mentioned that this is kind of my own life's work. And it's funny because literally 5 years ago, I was so detached from my own body that people would ask me, how are you doing today? I was always like, well, I didn't get this done. It was like very task focused. I really treated my body as its only purpose was to carry my head around from meeting to meeting. Like my body was a servant of my mind. And there is so much research now that actually a lot of what I'm reading recently is the gut is your second brain. And there is a communication between your head and gut that's triggered on what you put in your body, the food. So I don't know if I'm really into food, clean food. And there's a lot of research now about how stuff like Cheetos and Doritos, like you hear people say, oh, they're designing food to be addictive. What they're saying is they have most likely mapped in a scientific way that if they put this chemical into the food and it goes into your body, into your stomach, it's going to send a signal to your brain that it wants more of it. So really not great stuff. But now that we're aware of it, we can dispel those thoughts that are being driven kind of from food by not putting that type of food in there. And I always like weaving in a quote. If you've been in these sessions, there's going to be some quote here. And this was the key that I needed in my own wellness journey, is giving my body the awareness that it deserves and using it. Now my body is a key tool in regulating my system. When I'm in a meeting and my body's reacting as if I'm in fight or flight, the first thing I'll think of is, first thing I do is I take a breath. because that is the bridge to your body from your mind. Just the deep inhale, and then I start to notice, my hand, am I gripped, with, like holding a pencil really tight. So I use my body as a signal of there's something happening here. My body's tense. Why is that? Somebody just said I didn't get that budget. It's not the end of the world. So it's all fun questions for you to ask yourself. So what do we do with our bodies to encourage this body talk? Is what I'm really trying to. It's an essence of listening to your body and not being so cerebral about it, I guess is the best way to say it. And I'd like to position or propose that these three elements, rest, movement, and nourishment, are the keys that unlock everything else. I feel like in our society today, it's the scale, it's the macros, it's did you get 10,000 steps or did you train this hard? All of that comes if you focus on rest, movement, and nourishment. This is really about functional, this is really about function and energy and recovery and fuel. And when we care for the body in these ways, everything else gets easier. Focus improves, mood lifts, capacity expands. Rest. I used to think that I could, as long as I got 5 hours of sleep, I was good. I have dispelled that belief. And I am the first person to say that sleep is, if you feel like you're getting movement, you're eating well, it's still but you're still kind of waking up, not leaping out of bed, well rested. Sleep is probably the next frontier for you to conquer. If we took a mindful look at all of this, I'm curious if we would decide what's really important and unimportant when it comes to things that impact our sleep. And what I mean by that is we may have all heard that blue light before bed can disrupt, then it's like, pardon the candor here, but blah, blah, blah. Blue light has some sort of scientific effect on your brain. But what I would say is scrolling important or unimportant when it comes to achieving better rest? I think you would say it's probably unimportant. Now, sleeping and waking consistently, I have had huge gains in my health by focusing on morning and evening routines. Everybody has their own blueprint, and that's what I work with people on, is really bringing all the tools to the table and then coaching people on what they think they can start, like what seems accessible. And then you just build from there. So I always go to bed. No, I shouldn't say always, because I did not go to bed at 10 o'clock last night. But I strive to go to bed regularly at 10 p.m. Now, with that kind of set in stone, I orient my day around that. Whereas I used to have the driver be work. Like, I want to get all of this stuff done and then I'll go to bed. And that I found was impacting my rest, because I hadn't understand kind of my energy levels yet throughout the day. And now I know I have to, they call it eat the frog. The hardest thing that I have to get done that day, or the most time sensitive, I do that first, because everything else then is kind of getting ahead. And so if you're someone that has a hard time kind of starting things, that maybe it's a new area or a complex problem that you can't just resolve right away and you put it off, that operating mode in and how you relate to your work could be impacting your sleep, because you're staying up late to try to get something out there. And so it's just a matter of sequencing, perhaps. And then limiting screens before bed and honoring your circadian rhythm. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here because there's so much research out there, but what this bullet is about is understanding that for centuries, our our human bodies were really designed around sunlight and sunset. And if you take away all of the world's, the alarms, what time would you actually wake up? And when I went through a wellness certification, one of the first things we did is we experimented with not having an alarm as a measure of, can we get a consistent sleep and wake schedule? And now most days I don't have an alarm at all. I just wake up when I wake up. Now, if there's something important, I will set an alarm, but I always wake up before it anyway. I don't know if that happens to a lot of you. You got to be somewhere, you set your alarm, and you can, most likely wake up 15 minutes before the alarm. Movement. Now, this doesn't have to be a training regimen, but it's the movement is a antidote to that unspoken stress that might be in your body. And a daily walks, and they can even be chunked up. Strength training. What is strength training? That's holding your own arm, holding your arm above your head. It doesn't have to be weightlifting, but something that signals to the muscles, I need you. So if, say you are trying to change the shape of your body, you don't want to lose your muscles. You want to lose the extraneous stuff your body doesn't need, probably stored as fat. And then play and joy based activity. That's stuff like dancing, or chasing your kids around the house, or your dog, getting your dog out to play ball. Something that ties joy and movement, so it doesn't feel like a chore. And then avoid prolonged sitting. Sitting is the new smoking. And even if you do just short bursts, you stand up and do 10 squats, that's going to go so far for your health, more than you think. It doesn't have to. I used to think that I had to change into my workout clothes, drive to the gym, all these things, that it wasn't sustainable. And now I do this exact thing. I have a set of weights actually right next to me, and I'll hold a large weight and I'll just do squats, 10 squats. And that's what I work people with. Like, we break down all these beliefs and we come up with a plan that works for you. Because what works for you isn't going to work for Neil or work for Kim. Now, the last one, nutrition and nourishment. We have to read labels. That's what all of this is about. Like, we really, as more and more has come out about the harm of food dyes, we're learning that other countries have outlawed certain American ingredients, and companies, cereal companies, will actually manufacture different formulas for the Europeans than they do the Americans. So they're already making things healthier, they're just not selling it to the Americans. That's terrible. So we have to own this. This is where we have the most agency. What do we put in our body? And I'm happy to share it. In order to get protein, I dispelled a limited belief this week that all my protein had to be hot. Well, now I'm I'm eating cold steak because I need the protein, and I found that it just was less time. I could make a bunch of, steak at one time and then just have one. I eat it like a piece of bread. Just have a piece of steak, and I'm getting my protein. So you got to come up with creative ways. But the thing that's interesting is to notice, how does the food you eat affect your energy? And now we're going to do the fun part. We can pause the recording and grab a pen and paper. And we're going to try to get more of that body talk going. And I'm going to give everyone, there's going to be a few prompts. But for the first one, if you don't, hopefully you have a pen and paper. And you can ask yourself, like, really just kind of take a deep breath, close your eyes if you feel comfortable, and your body. So I remember the first time I did this, I thought it was the weirdest thing. I'm like, why? What does he mean? It was a male coach, and he's like, you got to ask your body, what does it want more of, and what does it want to let go of? And I'm like, well, how is it going to answer? I got so like analytical about it. It's just really, there's thoughts in there. And start when you say, I'm going to ask my body, what does it want more of? What is the next thought? Maybe beyond the this is weird. After that thought, what what does it say? Another idea in the same concept is that concept of start, stop, continue. If your body had a little microphone and could talk to you, what would it want to start? What would it want to stop? And what thing would it say, hey, you're doing this really well? So hopefully, and if you're head down writing, take a look at the slides one more time, because this is another way to tease out some conversation with your body. Again, imagining that kind of microphone, and on a scale of 1 to 10, how sweet sleep quality, movement, nourishment, hydration, rest and recovery, all of those areas. I'm going to do a little writing myself. Let's give it 2 minutes.
Okay, at this point, I'll go ahead and stop the recording. I just wanted to let everyone get the prompts in first. Okay, so
Yeah.
everyone will know we're not being recorded after this. So let me just pause the recording.